The scorching sun reflected off the hot asphalt, and the hurried footsteps of strangers crossed paths without one even noticing the other. Amidst the coming and going, Clara walked with the help of her white cane. Each touch on the ground was like a heartbeat, constant, firm, determined. She had lost her sight 2 years earlier in a car accident that also took her mother. Since then, she had lived alone in a small apartment in the city centre, working remotely as a Braille proofreader. That morning seemed like any other. Clara felt the wind on her face, heard the sounds of cars, and smelled the fresh bread coming from the bakery on the corner. But something different was about to happen. Sitting on a park bench, Diego stared into space. He wasn't blind, but his soul was clouded by disappointment. A former manager of a logistics company, he had been unfairly fired and accused of fraud. With his reputation ruined, he couldn't even find a job as a delivery man. He spent his days wandering around, thinking about how everything had gone wrong so suddenly. Clara sat down next to him, as she always did at that time. It was the only shaded bench she could find on her own, counting her steps from the entrance. Without knowing it, for months, they had both occupied the same space without even noticing the other's presence. This time, Diego decided to break the silence. "Excuse me, do you always sit here?" Clara turned her face towards the voice. "Yes, since I learned to count steps." "Why?" "Nothing. I just found it curious. I usually come here too." "Well, now we know we have similar tastes," she replied with a slight smile. "You're blind, right?" "Yes, I'm surprised you asked directly. I'm sorry if I was rude. I just had a bad day." "We all do. But at least you can still see the colors of the day." Diego looked down. "What if I told you that seeing sometimes hurts more than not seeing?" Clara tilted her head. "You seem to carry an old sadness. They accused me of a crime I didn't commit. I was fired, humiliated. I became invisible to everyone." "And you decided that the whole world is guilty?" "No, but I lost faith in everything." "Maybe you haven't found the right person to return it to yet." He stared at her for a moment, admiring the firmness in her voice. Even blind, she seemed to see through the layers he tried to hide. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara. And yours?" "Diego." "Nice to meet you, Diego. Now that we've met, maybe this part of the park will be a little brighter for both of us." He laughed genuinely for the first time in months. The next day, Diego brought a red rose. Clara couldn't see it, but when she touched it, she felt the freshness of the petals and smiled. "Why a rose?" "Because I thought you deserved something nice." "And why red?" "Because it's the color of new beginnings. For me, at least." "You're good with words, Diego." "It wasn't, but you made me want to tell the truth." The following weeks were filled with silent encounters and conversations that made time disappear. Diego helped Clara cross streets, find new paths. Clara listened to his stories with patience and kindness. The connection between them grew like a plant that is carefully watered, slowly but surely. One afternoon, Diego appeared quieter than usual. "Did something happen?" Clara asked. "I've been offered a job, but I don't know if I should accept it." "Why?" "It's in the same sector, the same area that destroyed me. I'm scared." "Do you still love what you did?" He hesitated. "Yes. Then go. Prove to yourself that you can stand up without having to prove anything to others." He took her hand. "You're amazing, Clara." She smiled. "I just try to live the way I have left, and now you're part of it." That night, Diego decided to accept the proposal. 2 weeks later, Clara did not appear at the park. He waited and waited the next day, and in the other, until he decided to go to her apartment. He knocked, called, insisted. A neighbor recognized him from his routine and approached him. "She was admitted yesterday." Respiratory complications. She is at Santa Lucia Hospital. Diego ran over there. He found Clara unconscious with an oxygen mask, but alive. The nurse explained to him that she suffered from an autoimmune condition and had ignored her symptoms for days. He held her hand. "You won't leave me now. You gave me the little light I had left." Days later, Clara woke up. "I knew you would come," he whispered. "And I'm not leaving here until you come back to me." She smiled weakly. "Did you bring more roses?" "Not today. But I brought courage. Yours?" She squeezed his fingers lightly. "Then I feel calmer. Because if I close my eyes now, I know there is someone who can guide me back." He kissed her on the forehead. "We'll get through this. Together." And outside, the wind blew lightly, like a whisper that the seasons were changing. The days in the hospital were long, but also full of small achievements. Clara learned to accept that her body needed care that she had put off out of pride and fear. Diego, for his part, discovered that hope was stronger than the bitterness that had consumed him. As time went by, he helped her exercise and rediscover the strength that still existed within her. And little by little, Clara recovered not only her physical health, but also her desire to dream again. In the silence of the nights they shared, Diego told stories of his childhood, of his mistakes, and how injustice had taught him to be more cautious. Clara, with her voice still weak, shared memories of a life that seemed distant when vision was her world. "Have you ever thought about trying surgery?" Diego asked one night, staring at the ceiling of his room. "Yes," she replied, closing her eyes. "But I'm afraid of what might happen. What if I wake up and it's no different?" "Fear is natural," he replied, holding her hand firmly. "But sometimes courage is all we need to open a new door." Clara took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of that hand that never left her. At that moment, she decided that she no longer wanted to live in shadows, metaphorical or otherwise. "Let's try," she said, determined. Diego smiled, relieved. A few days later, after leaving the hospital, they scheduled an appointment with a specialist abroad. The trip was a mixture of anxiety and hope. For Clara, it was a chance to reconnect with the world she had lost. For Diego, it was an opportunity to build a life with her, far from the scars of the past. Before the surgery, Clara asked Diego to take her to a park near the hospital. They sat on a bench under a shady tree. "You know, sometimes I'm afraid of what's going to happen when I open my eyes," she confessed. "I'll be here," he said, looking into her eyes, "to remind you who you are." The next morning, Clara underwent the procedure. The hours seemed endless to Diego, who waited outside the operating room, his hands shaking, his heart pounding. When the doctor finally appeared, he smiled. The surgery was a success. Now all that's left is recovery and a little patience. A short time later, Clara opened her eyes. Lights and shapes began to slowly reveal themselves, as if the world were a book that she was rereading page by page. The first thing he saw was Diego's face, full of tears and smiles. "I saw you," she said, her voice still weak. "And I was here the whole time," he replied, kissing her hand. Back in the country they faced challenges, of course. Clara had to relearn everything, but now with vision as an ally. Diego returned to work, now stronger, with renewed courage to face the past. Together, they decided to fight to clear his name, confront those who had destroyed his life, and prove that even in the face of the greatest adversity, love and hope could transform destinies. And so, between tears and smiles, challenges and victories, Clara and Diego began to write a new chapter, one where the light came not only from the eyes, but from the heart. Months later, with Clara recovered and Diego officially exonerated, their lives took a turn that previously seemed impossible. Diego's name was cleared in court thanks to the tireless work of Clara's sister, who managed to obtain concrete evidence against the real culprit. The company that accused him was forced to pay him compensation, and he was able to rebuild his career with dignity. Clara, now seeing the world with her own eyes, discovered that there was more beauty in it than she had ever imagined. Not just in the colors, but in the little things. Diego's smile, the smell of the flowers in the park, the warmth of the sun on her skin. They decided to move to a modest house, close to the park, where so many important moments had happened. There, they built a simple routine, but full of love and complicity. One sunny afternoon, sitting on the bench under the same tree, Diego held Clara's hand and said, "Promise that no matter what happens, we will continue to fight together." She smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "And I promise, because now I know that life, with all its difficulties, is worth it when we have someone by our side." And so, between the light she could see again and the new beginning he achieved, Clara and Diego proved that true vision goes beyond the eyes. It lies in the strength of the heart that never gives up.